So one of those stories, anyway, long story short, lands me in prison. I spent 32 months in prison. Fast forward now, even through all that, convicted felon, um, and everything, no support, no financial help from anyone. I went from $8 an hour to, my last W-2 was like 238 grand. And then I was able to start a company and, did 1.5 in the first year, which, sounds good, but first year troubles and, we're fighting through them. But me and my wife went through a little something which caused me to do just this internal deep dive. And to be honest, I haven't stopped. And
Right
it
on.
has been the most fulfilling journey. God put it on my heart that it has all been preparation for what's coming. And when that thought entered my mind, everything changed. I went from being a victim to being prepared.
How we overcome life's challenges is dependent upon our will and our desire to see the truth that is in front of us. Sometimes that truth cannot be only be difficult for us to see, but painful also to admit. Now, most of us will face adversity, some more than others. And today's guest is going to share his incredible story of his journey to overcome some of life's most devastating adversity. And before we get into all that, I just want to remind you to hit like, subscribe, and share on your favorite platform so you can stay updated on our latest content, as well as helping me grow the Awakened Man message. And for that, just want to say I'm truly grateful. Now, let's get on with today's episode.
The average man today is sleepwalking through life, many never reaching their true potential, let alone ever crossing the finish line to living a purposeful life. Yet, the hunger still exists, albeit buried amidst his cluttered mind, misguided beliefs, and values that no longer serve him. It's time to align yourself for greatness. It's time to become a revolutionary man. Stay strong, my brother.
Welcome, everyone, to the Revolutionary Man podcast. I'm the founder of The Awakened Man and your host, Alan DeMonso. Why don't you take a moment now and think back of a time when you faced adversity? Were you able to overcome it? Or is it still lingering in the background, quietly sabotaging your goals? The truth is that anytime we face adversity, there will be some residual side effects. Our work then is to recognize that these side effects are at play and then develop strategies to overcome them. And in that strategy is where we find where change needs to occur. And sometimes it's going to happen in one area of our lives, and other times it's going to require complete overhaul. So let me allow me to introduce my guest today. Jonathan York is the founder of the Resilient Man Project, and Jonathan's journey is one of fighting for everything that he has, from convicted felon to successful business owner and host of this Resilient Man podcast. He's made profound changes in his life. Welcome to the show, Jonathan. How are things today?
They're great. Thanks for having me.
In my men's work, we always talk a lot about all of us being on our own hero's quest, and you've been on quite one yourself. So tell us a little about your journey, how the trials have shaped you, if you had any mentors along the way and how they may have guided you, and how all of that, your whole story, has led you to doing what you are doing today and the man that you are.
Sure. I grew up, my mom had me at 16, dad at 17. My mom an addict pretty much my whole life. It's my first memory is of her on a mattress all day. A can of potato soup. I don't know if it's the only can. I don't get that much detail, but I remember. I mean, this is like 3 or 4 years old, so this is. Um, I ended up with dad finally, like around 5. I bounced around grandma, mom, back and forth. Ended up with dad at 5. This is in Jonesboro, which is South Atlanta, kind of a rough area. Drugs, drinking, all that stuff, just everywhere, just the norm. Gangs. We idolized gangsters and drug dealers, and I mean that's who we wanted to be. They had the money, they had the cars, they had the girls. That was just kind of a lifestyle. So didn't really get in too much trouble there. Went on to high school. We moved. My parents, worked their way to get a little bit of a nicer house, and we kind of got out of that area, went a little further from the city. Had a fairly normal high school, a lot of drinking, a lot of drugs, but just, fairly normal, party. But I met my first wife at 18, first child at 19, second child at 20, married at 21. Now, in these years is where the addiction really started to show up in me. Man, for those years in my 20s when I was married, it was a double life, basically. I would kind of keep things semi-okay at home, but get off work and run the streets that I grew up on, and just horrible, horrible husband, horrible father, horrible human being, if I'm being, honest. Foreclosure in there. I mean, just really, really bad. Well, I finally had enough of my crap around 30 and divorced me. When that happened, I just turned it up about 10 notches and really hit the streets hard, hotel to hotel. Ended up kind of like the right hand man to a pretty big drug dealer. So he'd be out doing whatever, and I'd be the guy in the room weighing things and collecting money. That was kind of my role. I could get into some stories there if we wanted to, some pretty wild ones, but so one of those stories anyway, long story short, lands me in prison. I spent 32 months in prison. I find my faith in prison. I those 3 years of quiet time and reflection and looking around and thinking, I know there's places I want to be, but this is not one of them. I do not belong here. There's some stories there we could get into as well that are pretty interesting. So work through prison. I get out on like a work release thing, like at a halfway house. It's a transitional center is what they call it.
Yeah.
I find a job for like $8 an hour. Get out of the transitional center, and within the first year of me being out, I mean, this is within like 2 or 3 weeks of me being out. No, maybe 30 days of me being out. I get a call from my sister that my mom has overdosed and is in ICU. So I spend a week with her in ICU. I mean, you're talking 3 days in, eyes rolled in the back of the head still, mouth hanging open. Like I'm thinking brain dead. Like even like never really have the conversation, but I'm hearing like whispers of, there might be some decisions having to be made, and I wasn't hearing it at all. I had already missed so much time, regardless of who my mom was, she was still my mom. You know what I mean? I did so much time with her. I felt like I literally sat there and prayed her, I mean, just willed her through. So she makes it through. While she's in, because it was an overdose, once she gets out of the hospital, she has to go through rehab. And while she's in rehab, her husband dies. So pulls her out of rehab early, which kind of, I get her, pulls her out of rehab early, but I actually, I mean, she pulls through pretty well. I get her out of her house into another apartment away from my sister and her boyfriend, because when the boyfriend was around, it was just introduced a lot more drugs, and it was just a bad mixture once he kind of entered the picture. So I was able to get her away from him to an apartment, and this is by my work, and I'm checking on her pretty much daily. And I'm on the back porch, and she gets a call from my sister, and she's like, "Hey man, this guy, we need somewhere to stay, blah blah blah." And I'm like, "Mom, you can barely take care of yourself. You just, So I get her to stand strong, and I feel like I'm proud of her and myself for helping her stand strong. But the problem is about a month or so later, I get a phone call from my aunt that my sister has died in some shitty hotel room, crappy hotel room in Atlanta. So like that gravity of, that weight instantly of like, I should have let her come back home. I shouldn't have done it, all those things. Then I find myself driving 30 minutes to tell my mom this, after she just had all that drug OD, her husband just passed. And then here I am driving to tell her that her only daughter. So you can imagine that morning, I would probably say one of the worst mornings of my life for sure. So over the next 6 months or so, it doesn't matter what I do. I can't keep alcohol away from my mom. She figures out a way to get it. She was prescribed all these medications already. And when she would get alcohol, man, it would, from the years of abuse and everything else. I mean, at this point, I feel like she was almost mentally and gone, to some extent. I would sit outside her apartment door sometimes and just listen to her have conversations with whatever. And sometimes it would be disturbing. And so I'm checking on her every day out on my lunch break. And I don't hear from her for like a day and a half. And it's just kind of weird. And so I got to check on her. And this is about a year after prison, about 6 months after my sister or so, somewhere in there. And opened the door. Her apartment's a complete wreck. And I found my mom in the back, suicide by OD. So I had built a really solid foundation of faith in prison. My faith was absolutely rocked at this point. I actually, in that moment, picked up some of the pain pills off the floor, and I had been clean to this point for a while, and took a few, which sent me on kind of a little bit of a tailspin. Not really a tailspin. I would just say more of a checkout for a couple of months. But thankfully, the Lord put it on my heart to maybe be a man for maybe the first time, I would say, in my life. And I called my wife and I said, "Hey, I need to talk to you about something." And I sat her down on the couch and I said, "Hey, this is what's been going on. I need help," and she helped me through it. And so fast forward now, even through all that, convicted felon, and everything, no support, no financial help from anyone. I went from $8 an hour to, my last W-2 was like 238 grand. And then I was able to start a company and, did 1.5 in the first year, which, sounds good, but first year troubles and, we're fighting through them, but it's not the best time to own a company in case anybody knows, in case anybody's wondering. But yeah, so that's kind of where I am. That's the 30,000 foot version of the story.
Man, Jonathan, my heart just goes out to you. You have shown such courage in telling your story and the things that you've had to deal with and overcome, and because you were able to find that faith, while being incarcerated, it was the peace that ultimately helped save you and steer you in the direction of what you're doing today. And I think it's just so powerful that, because there's so many people that could be in a similar situation or even less and not be able to make that choice, and to have having your sister and your mother end up by ultimately ODing, and then being able to be in a position to have that resilience and the courage to go to your wife and tell her everything, and for her to support you must have been it must have just totally changed your life.
It was definitely a big step. I would say, I still spent the next few years, doing okay, probably by most people's standards, but still just, not all the way awake,
Yeah.
And then about 2 years ago, me and my wife went through a little something which caused me to do just this internal deep dive. And to be honest, I haven't stopped. And
Right on.
it's been the most fulfilling journey. God put it on my heart that it has all been preparation for what's coming. And when that thought entered my mind, everything changed. I went from being a victim to being prepared.
Yeah.
Instantly. I don't know, man. Cool thing.
Right on. Well, that's a perfect segue into the next question I wanted to ask. Now you have the podcast and your work as a Resilient Man podcast, but tell me, what does it mean to be resilient for you when you think about that word and you think about the work that you're doing? What does resilience really mean?
To me, it just means, being ready and able to withstand whatever life is about to throw at you next, because something's coming, and we have a choice. Either we get through it and we bounce back and we make it to the other side, or we let it beat us. And, I'm not going to let anything beat me.
Yeah. No, definitely not, especially listening to the stuff that you've overcome. And I would totally agree with your definition there. It's about being prepared and knowing that life's going to throw things at you, and not willing to give into that and succumb to that pressure. And you're obviously proving that, and yes, learn first year business, you're going to have first year troubles. You're learning everything on the fly, and you have a great skill set, but there's so much more to business than just the thing that you love to do. And I applaud you for stepping forward anyways, because more men need to do that. I mean, you just step forward and face our fear and just deal with the things that's in front of us. Tell me, what was a pitfall that you think you were had that was preventing you from succeeding before? What was that? What would be that pitfall, or there's a few of them?
Man, the biggest one is just the victim mentality, I would think is the number one, just looking at, everything. Why me? Why me? Why me?
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. Being that victim. And what was it that was able to flick that switch to move you from being that victim mindset? Was there any mentors along the way that helped change that? Or was it I know you said you found faith, being locked up there for 3 years, but is there anything else that happened for you that helped flick that switch?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all centered around faith. I had never gone to church really, not consistently ever, never had a real relationship with Jesus ever. Um, I felt like he began to almost like, I tell people when I woke up from my haze, when I got incarcerated. So like when you run the lifestyle that I did for the first like month, you just sleep or whatever. And then finally one day you just kind of wake up and you're kind of yourself a little bit. And I almost feel like from that day, I even remember like listening to like there's a Christian radio station down here and like just listening to it and like some sun shining through the window. And I started to try to live almost from that day to now. I've done my very best to, just live a honorable life, like do something I'm going to say I'm going to do it. And so there were some people along the way inside that really kind of helped. There was a pastor inside that come every like Wednesday. And I'm pretty sure his name was Red. I wish I could find him because
Yeah.
he baptized me in a slop sink or whatever in the kitchen, and I mean, these, and this is just given this time, and then
Yeah.
I get out and my aunt and uncle, when I'm in the transitional center, they drive like 30 minutes to pick me up every Sunday, drive me like an hour to church because I got to leave for like 12 hours, then drive me 30 minutes back to their house to hang out and then back. So they spent like every Sunday, all day driving me around to make sure that I felt loved, to make sure that everybody, that I knew that people cared about me, and to make sure that I had a relationship with Christ because they knew that I needed it. Then I get out and we find when I told you I had that conversation with my wife on the couch, we had just went to like a pre-launch of this church that was just starting, hadn't even had services yet. And she was like, "Why don't you reach out to the pastor?" His name was Clint, and it seemed like a pretty good guy, so why not? And I found a church home there. For the first time in my life, I found people that cared about me and loved me, and it was just this. I mean, I met through there probably my main mentor. His name is Jeremy, and he. I mean, every Wednesday, meet me for lunch. Just people like pouring into me that really were the catalyst, I would say, for this change. I mean, at least to get my heart prepared to receive.
Yes. That is phenomenal. And isn't it just it's so inspirational to know that just when we think that the darkest moments in our life, that, God brings the people in that we need, puts the situation in front of us that we need. And because you were already open to receive, and look at how much your life has changed. It's just so incredible. I can really commend you for that shift.
Yeah, man, my relationship with Jesus is amazing. Like we just have conversations all the time at this point. I literally look up and I'm like, all right, what's next? What you need from me now? Let's go. It's awesome.
Yeah, awesome. Love that. Listen, tell me a little bit. So you talked a little bit about, addiction and you some of those struggles for yourself as well. But tell me a little bit about, what it was like for you to finally break free from that, and how that changed your life.
I tell you, the when you're an addict, and there's this thing like in the back of your mind that's always there. That's like, I mean, you always have it, but it's like you're always like planning your day, planning okay, I'm leaving for this 4 or 5 hours. I got to make sure I'm this, you know what I mean? It has you, man, it has you just I can't even like put words to the grip that it can have on a man. And I mean, honestly, who knows if I hadn't got arrested and spent 32 months with, who knows,
Yeah.
it's a hard thing to make. My drug of choice was pain pills and methamphetamines, and both of those get you, man. They get you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can only imagine the control that must have had on your life, and to be able to reclaim that control. But now you sounds like you've really poured your energy and your heart into your new business. So tell me, what's the best thing that has happened since you started your business?
Man, I tell you, Resilient Man Project has had made me have conversations that I just never would have had. I mean, this one, for instance, but I mean, so many and so many messages, and like that Facebook Messenger has the little phone thing, so I
Yeah.
might just get random phone calls and I'll answer them just for the heck of it. And I'll tell you a story last night. This one gave me chills. This is true. So, okay, yesterday I'm driving home. I have another business and I've traveled a lot with it. And I'm coming back and I get this call and it's a messenger. And it was the first time it happened. I was like, oh, cool. So I answered it. And he said, there's an older black gentleman up in Baltimore. And he said, is that you talking on the radio program? And I said, yes, sir, it is. And he said, I don't know why, but God put it on my heart to tell you that I know people will hurt you, but you need to let it go.
Mm.
And then don't be afraid your voice will be heard. I had chills again.
Yeah.
I mean, like this random stranger calls me and tells me this, like, what do you do with that other than, it's like, I don't know, man. It's been wild. It's been amazing. Amazing.
Absolutely. I got goosebumps just hearing you tell that story. Just we just are so unaware of how impactful our lives are and the work that we do. And it's so needed. And we need lots of different voices. We need people to step forward and men to step forward who've gone through life's challenges like you have and have changed their life and are working at being better. It's not a one and done thing. It's a continual progress, right? And
It is. It's long progress.
yeah, it's progress over perfection, right, brother? Like it's just keep one step forward day in and day out. And to hear, to have a complete stranger reach out to you and tell you about how important the work you're doing and to remind you of the work that you still need to do.
And to tell me that he loved me.
Yeah.
That's literally what he called to tell me, that he loved me.
Outstanding.
Right?
What would be one thing that people don't really realize is that about addiction and trauma? We hear people, I know we're talking about your stuff, but what is one thing in you went through your recovery process? I'm trying to get a sense of what is it, something that people who haven't had to deal with that in life, what is it that we don't recognize or we don't understand about addiction and trauma?
Man, there's a lot of really good people that are addicts that
Mm-hmm.
do really bad things. That stuff gets you, you know. And then on the trauma side, just you never know when. Like going back to that day with my mom, when I hear certain noises or something, you never know when it's going to take you back to that moment.
Yeah,
That's kind of scary sometimes.
absolutely. Hey, listen. So, what would be one resource, or what is something you would lean on the most that has been and you found have been most effective in your transformation and who you are today? Is there something that you've leaned on more so than others?
Man, I wish I had a Bible right there, but I don't.
Right on. Any particular part of the Bible that resonates with you more than the others?
Uh, I mean, it sounds kind of dark, but I'm really into Revelations right now.
Yeah.
Really into Revelations right now. A lot of people should be really into Revelations right now, I think.
Yeah. Lots of big changes in the world right now. People need to wake up to it.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, listen, I think I found, as I was stalking you and getting ready for our interview today, I think I noticed that you were wearing a couple of Larry Wagner's Dad Edge philosophies attire. Have you been involved with his work? And if so, how has that changed your life?
I have been involved with his work just from a a consumer kind of point of view. I'd say there's three people that I've found that really have kind of are my podcast that kind of really I'm like my godfathers. And I mean, one, he's not for everybody, but Andy Frisella, Larry. I go to Andy for my mindset stuff, and I go to Larry for my marriage and my parenting and those types of things. And then Zach Babcock is just kind of a friend of mine, and he really has helped me put this podcast thing together. So those three guys are huge credit to those three guys. Like I said, Andy doesn't know he's a mentor of mine. Larry kind of does, and Zach absolutely does. But Larry's a really good guy. I just went to his event up in St. Louis in October and got to meet him and stuff. Yeah, it was a really good time. Really important work and a lot of really great guys. I highly recommend anybody to check them out. Good people.
I would totally agree. I'm a big fan and follower of Larry's for a while now, and Andy's as well. And Andy may not be for everyone because he's gonna slap you in the face whether you like to hear it or not, and that's okay. And we need people to tell it like it is and just be straight with us. So that's awesome. Tell a little bit more about your podcast. It's the work that you're doing around it. What's the goal of the podcast? How do you see this transforming over the next little while?
Okay, yeah, sure. The podcast is, it's really just trying to hammer home that point of that you were saying earlier. It's just progress. It's a little bit better. It's making the small change. It's build. I like to call it building. I like to build a solid habit. And then those little things compound, and then then you kind of mix in a medium thing, and that kind of compounds, and then before you know it, you wake up one day and you're a totally different man.
Yeah,
it can be done. I promise, it can be done. Doesn't matter who you are.
Absolutely,
it's a long process, though.
Yeah, just got to do the work, right?
Right.
Yeah, right on. Excellent. So go ahead, Jonathan.
No, I was going to say that's probably the heart of it. The heart of it, and then I think based on is to help wake men up too. I really want to help, and my go-to line is I feel like that I am the only one sober, and I'm at a party and everybody's drunk. That's how it feels. People are sleepwalking and don't care about the way they carry themselves, the way they talk, the way they handle this. It's just there's so many people out there that think life is drinking a cola and watching the game and this and that and this, and man, there's so much more to life. So much more to life.
Yeah, I hear you. It took me a long time to figure that lesson out. So I know exactly what you're saying, man. Listen, of everything that we've talked about today, and maybe there's something I didn't get a chance to touch on, what would be a one takeaway you would want our listeners to remember?
I think it's that it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what you've been through. It doesn't matter who your family name is. It doesn't matter what everybody in your family before you has done. None of that matters.
Yeah.
It doesn't, not at all. You can be the one that changes everything for everybody forever.
Yeah. Amen to that, brother. Listen, Jonathan, I just want to say thank you so much for spending time with me today. And no matter what circumstances are, or the cards that we're dealt with from life or God, it requires us to develop some resilience. And today, my friend, you've demonstrated that in spades. I just want to say thank you so much for being on the show. Now, if somebody wanted to get involved with your work, listen to the podcast, what would be the best way for them to do that?
It's on all platforms, whatever favorite platform is. Just Resilient Man Project. Same thing. It's on, if you like video, it's on YouTube as well. Resilient Man Project, Facebook, all of it. Instagram, TikTok, Resilient Man Project.
Right on. Well, I'm going to make sure I put that information in the show notes so folks can reach out and get a hold of you, and get you a few more messenger calls, because I think that's just the work that you're doing, brother, is much needed in this world today.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, and thank you for having me on, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Revolutionary Man podcast. Are you ready to own your destiny? To become more the man you are destined to be? Join the brotherhood that is The Awakened Man at theawakenedman.net and start forging a new destiny today.